Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. This afternoon, we are going to take a quick look at the Microsoft tools for 21st century learning design, the resources and courses that are available, some ideas of how that might be applicable to the tools that you have within and out with Glow, and it will hopefully give you some ideas to use in your classroom, as well as if you're taking part in the MCE offer that we have available from DigiLearnScot, Microsoft and Prodigy Learning. So we're going to look at where you can access information. So I'm going to give you a little overview. We're going to talk about the Microsoft 21st Century Learning Design, how it's linked to research, the amazing rubrics that are available that you might want to start incorporating, share with your colleagues. Also, if you're a school that's doing the DSAS, Digital Schools Awards Scotland, these might be of particular interest because it all kind of works together to form that bigger picture. We'll then have a wee chat around some of the tools and ideas that you can use that are, as I said, available in and out with Glow. Today we're going to talk than demonstrate, although I will demonstrate a couple. Some features in Edge that actually work really nicely with this. And then we're also going to have a chat about OneNote and Teams as well. There's 4 of these sessions, so we'll also talk about where to get next steps, which session may be most used to you, and where we have additional materials that might be of use. As I say, please do use the chat, and I would be really happy to answer any questions if I can. If not, I will get back to you with an answer, but hopefully I can. And then finally, there will be time to look at the resources that are in the team prep for the exams if you want to do those, and if not, just further your knowledge of this. So really quick reminder, I'm just going to drop it in because we talk about it a lot, but obviously many of you will be aware we have 365 products available in Glow. If you haven't already, or maybe thinking ahead for your new cohort of learners coming to your class or your department or your school next year, please just make sure that everyone is aware that they can have 5 free downloads of the Office tools, because all of the things that we're covering today are Windows products, and there are other products available. We are looking at Microsoft tonight, and this is an amazing offer for everybody. It helps to kind of support all learners as well as staff. So for those of you who are new, and as I said, this is an introductory session, 21st Century Learning Design is based on research that Microsoft have carried out along with LTS. So they carried out a whole range of research, and they decided that there were 6 dimensions that each area of education should look at. So these are anyone covering education, and they are on the screen. So knowledge construction, how information is retained by our learners, how learners and staff collaborate, real world problem solving and innovation, self-regulation, skilled communication, and digital tools. So I should have introduced myself, I'm so sorry. My name is Jenny Mackay. I'm from the Education Scotland DigiLearnScot team. I'm one of the digital officers. But one thing when I was reading this is that it jumped out that these align so nicely to many other sort of resources or tools or pieces of research that are available. So we're going to link to some of them, but hopefully you can see how, for example, self-regulation might link to the metacognition work that you may be aware of from EEF. Our team have also done a session, Louise and I have done an input on self-regulated learning around metacognition too. Also, we've got the meta skills 4.0 from SDS. So when we're thinking about real world problem solving and innovation, that links so nicely to those, so does collaboration. And knowledge construction is kind of mixed in with all of those things. My team obviously work with digital tools, so although they're key and we would say they're really important, they shouldn't be the first thing. It's about all of the skill sets together. So this afternoon we're going to focus particularly on knowledge construction, collaboration, self-regulation, and skilled communication. So they're the 4 rubrics that we're going to hone in on today. So I realise this is super tiny, so I will put a PDF of this in this webinars channel file space at the end of the call. So if you do want to visit it, everything's in one place. All of the information I'm sharing with you is either directly or indirectly from the 21st Century CLD course, so if you are doing that, you'll find a lot of it there. However, this is kind of drawing it from lots of different areas, so as I say, there'll be a PDF for you there. But those 6 dimensions that we talked about, these are the definitions. So as you can see, we're talking about learners who should be collaborating with each other. And we're going to talk about what each of these looks like. But these are things that we do day to day. So one of the core things, and the reason that I broke it down like this is, these are things that we all either do day to day or aspire to do day to day or are trying to develop within our settings. So this, if you are undertaking this and not sure about whether or not you've got time, these are things, please be assured that you're probably already doing. If you're not already doing them, you'll be on the way to doing them or developing them as part of your school improvement, etc. So we're going to look at some of the tools that can be used within them. Within our dimensions, we focus on the innovative teaching practices, and they're broken down into these: learning-centred pedagogy, extending learning, and ICT. And it's all about, exactly as it says there, personalised learning, so learners' voice, and we hear that from Curriculum for Excellence a lot. Learners having that voice, and learners being able to personalise their learning through tools such as OneNote, being able to access resources freely, easily, using a range of different styles, and that can be done using a range of tools that still convey their messages. So for some learners, that might even be using Whiteboard built into the team, that they can export that out and they can put that in as an image or a PDF and submit that as their piece of work. So learner-centred pedagogy, where we're looking at what the learner needs to know, what they do already know, what they're going to be developed, and the style of their learning. All of those, being able to personalising their learning allows them to self-regulate their own work and also moderate how they're doing as they're going along, asking for help where it's appropriate and collaborating with others. Extending their learning, so again, that flexible model using these digital tools. Developing problem solving strategies, so if something doesn't necessarily fit it, being able to link out. So if that is, they want to create an assessment but they don't want to create a form, how could they do that via team, etc. So being able to apply these different strategies is key. The digital hub for teams allows the learners to be able to link up everything that they need in one place. It lets them be able to look up information, link across it. So again, they're able to link out with other people within their setting, and it allows them to have that flexible mode. And that ICT integration, allows our learners to have that kind of flexibility when they're building their knowledge as well as their creativity. We don't want learners, however, to be able to just replicate it. So we don't want, if it's something they could do on paper, we want there to be added value. And that's the thing that we hear in education quite a lot, like what is the added value? And all of the digital tools should be able to add some value if you're using them. We don't want our learners to consume, we want them to create. So there's aspects of them doing research, etc., that are relevant, but that isn't constructing new knowledge. That is them just sort of replicating what is already there. We want them to be able to transfer it. So within knowledge construction, there's 4 concepts. So interpretation, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. And synthesis is essentially identifying relationships. So an example for social studies would be like a compare and contrast activity between periods in time of somebody's life or a geographical space. So when learners are using that, teams would allow them to have those dialogues where they could do some research, go off, collaborate, share their understanding with someone else. They're also able to use built-in resources in their class team, for example, class OneNote, and they can collaborate because it allows them to create a graphic organizer of their work. It allows them to input text, audio, video, and again, we want our learners to be creative, so using digital inking, and that allows us as practitioners to give feedback verbally, give feedback as a video file, also annotate on top, so it's that kind of flexible model. But essentially, we don't want them just replicating, we want them to edit, and we want them to be able to transfer and apply their skills in their learning. And again, that kind of links back to that kind of metacognition discussion that we talked about. So, knowledge construction, each of the areas, the 6 dimensions that I showed you on that sort of grid at the start, has one of these rubrics. Can you just pop in the chat if you've seen these rubrics before? Just yes or no. This would be useful because I don't want to go into if it's something everyone's super familiar with. I'm also going to show you one way that young people could, no, so we've got 1 yes, 1 no, no, perfect, right, okay, so far we're on the it's like a 50-50, right, okay, so we're tipped into the no, that's perfect, okay. So, knowledge construction rubric, each of the 6 dimensions that we spoke about at the start has one of these rubrics attached. These allow you to be able to see where your lesson, for example, in this case, where your lesson would sit. So when you're kind of reviewing what you're doing, when you create your lesson plan, the learning activity, you would work out which of these does it sit within. So, for example, level 1 would say the activity doesn't require learners to construct knowledge, they're basically replicating it. So that might be they've just got books out of the library, or they've gone on the internet and they've just cut and pasted, for example, stuff off it. So there's not really any new knowledge being gained there, and so the skill that they're gaining, maybe can they search for an appropriate thing, in which case that would be fine, but are they gaining new knowledge? So you have to work out what the learning intention is and then decide on that versus the knowledge construction rubric. So as you can see, it's really straightforward. You're going to go back, you're going to look. Obviously, the higher up the number you get, the more knowledge construction this package says that you are gaining. So again, if we were to be doing number 1, we might be asking them to share an image, putting it in our OneNote, for example, and that's shared with me as the teacher. But at level 5, we might have that, so sorry, I've got a window that's popped up. We would maybe have it that they are taking their information, they are creating, for example, a sway, or they've created their own section, they've created a brand new group, OneNote or a sway. They're all collaborating. People have then gone off and done further research that expands on the first set of research, and that spawns sways within sways, and it can be a whole wealth of information that they've taken some information, they've applied it to the task, they've transferred those skills to find new information, and it's expanded. At the bottom, you can see there, it also says, oops, there's my mouse. The knowledge is interdisciplinary, so it's not just looking at one subject. That is obviously harder to do within a secondary context than it is in a primary context. However, it might be that you're able to work with colleagues within departments, and that you're, by including technologies, you may be developing some of the E's and O's around technologies as well. So it doesn't just have to be within one particular subject. So PE, I always think, is a really great example of that, because there's a lot of technology can be used in PE to look at the motion of throwing, etc. And one school that I had worked with before, there was an amazing PE department, and they had a OneNote that young people had their own section. Film of their them throwing a ball was put in, and they looked at the sort of techniques that were being used, etc. I'm probably doing it a disservice. It was really, really good. I'm not explaining the PE side of it very well. However, what they were able to do was develop recording skills. They were able to develop their PE skills in terms of like biomechanics, throwing the ball, etc. They were also able to get live feedback and interact with it. They were then able to go off and do some research, and all of that was contained within one area. Okay, so that's that rubric. There's also decision trees. So if you're unsure, you also can take these. Each of these areas, these slides also take you to the pages where you can find these decision trees and rubrics. These are really useful. So if you ask yourself your main question, will this lesson require knowledge construction? Yes, no, it tells you the level that it would be coming out at. So if you're not sure and you're looking for a little bit of help around self-evaluation, these decision trees are really useful. One of the things before I go on, I'm just going to stop my presentation very briefly, and I'm going to show you something that you may or may not be using. I hope that you are, but if you're not, this can be beneficial. So one of the things that we are going to look at is how young people might capture information. So we spoke about them not just replicating. Couple of things they can do to share kind of their research with you before they start creating their own is you might want them to start using collections. Is anyone using collections? You've been fab in the chat, so please do keep with yes and no if that's possible. So if you've done research, then this is, so a few people saying no so far, thank you so much. Okay, so I really hope that you find this useful. I love it. So if you're using Edge, what you can do is you can do some research. So I just went to the news site for a reason I'm going to talk about in a minute, but this can be for anything. Up at the top, you may or may not be signed into your Glow account depending on how your device is connected, if it's a school device, etc. But next to that, you should see these two boxes with a plus sign. These are collections and they work a little bit like bookmarks, but you can do so much more with them. So for example, if I wanted to add this page to my collection, I might want to create a new one around technology. So I simply go to the page, select that box, and I'm going to create a new collection. So you can see I've already got one for this session, but I'm going to create a new one. So I'm going to call it technology. And I'm just, all I want to do is add the current page, but you can see I can also drag like an image from the page that I'm using as well, so we can create like a library. So select add and it's in there. So now I've got all of these collections. So you might ask your young people to go off and do some research, but it might be for fine motor skills, it might be challenging for them to like move it into folders and save hyperlinks. This is a really nice way for them to have it. However, if you then go back, you can do lots more. So the three dots up at the top allow you to edit, delete, etc. If you go into one, so here's one with a couple of links for 21st century CLD, I can right click over it, I can send a link to it, I can edit the file, I can open that again in a new window, but I can also add notes. So as I've gone through, I might want to go away and I might want to put some notes in. So if I click that, the page opens up. If I click in here, select the box, you can see I can also, whilst I'm perusing that site, I can also add in a sticky note, and that is stuck like a virtual post-it. So we all use post-its and the stickies probably on our devices from time to time. However, this is attached to that. If I then wanted, I can go in here with the three dots and I can do a whole range of other things. So I can check it for citations. So if you're here from a secondary, I would imagine this is probably really useful for you if you have students that are needing to reference accurately. This will tell you where on this page there are citations from different professional bodies. I can also choose to send it to a OneNote. So again, if me and my work, if I was a learner, I might send this to a OneNote, or I might send it to a Word document. So if I just do that just now, Word is opening up. Everybody keep your fingers crossed that my network won't go down doing this. There we go. And you can see I can start up a shared page that I could then add in using the share feature. I can add in my group mates too, and we can all have different roles and responsibilities, so we can then collaborate on that. I still have my list, I can pin it, I can share the whole list with my teacher, or I can share this with a colleague, or we could have a collaborative one. I can also pin it as well if I wanted to make sure, like if I've got lots. So if you haven't used this, this is a really great one for learners starting to look at the research behind that knowledge construction, but not just using it as a sort of like find information, never go back to a bookmark. Because I don't know about you, but I'm really guilty of that. I have loads of bookmarks and I probably forget that half of them are there and just search for half the things again. This is a really nice way. The visual, you can edit the titles, you can share it amongst people, and I really like the citations and the fact that I can really easily link it to a OneNote. If it's data that you're searching for, so if you're sort of phys ed, computing science, etc., and you might, or maths, you might have some data that you get from open source, you could import that into Excel as well and do some work around that if you wanted to parse it out. So that's collections. One other thing I wanted to show you that you may have seen is you might want learners to do some research. So not all web pages do this, and I'm sure many of you will have seen this. However, I just did want to flag it up in case you hadn't. Immersive Reader, so it's the one of the accessibility tools in here, allows you to strip out all of the redundant information that's on the page that's not pertinent to what you're trying to do. So for learners, this could be really useful because it may, if you're doing teaching, this can be beneficial for you because you're able to strip out maybe things that are not appropriate depending on the age and stage of your class. So here we've got an article about e-waste. I look on my web bar for Immersive Reader. If I enter into Immersive Reader, you'll see I've immediately got an article from BBC News with everything stripped out. I still have all of the amazing read aloud text features, etc. But I can also right click and I can save this as a PDF. So if I was to print this page, it would print as a PDF and I can then send that in a shared OneDrive, in my collaborative team, etc. If you don't see one Immersive Reader, so Mrs. Love, you beat me to it. I love that you were checking for it though. So a couple of things. Not all web pages have Immersive Reader available. It depends. So today I was on BBC News. Some articles had it, some articles didn't, depending on the content. So if you go to the BBC News site, the BBC site's a really good one to start with. That has lots of places where you should see it. But this is a really nice way. So if you have colleagues, if you're secondary, modern studies teachers, please tell them about this feature. It's so useful. And again, we can then save this into my collection in that reader mode. So there's two tools that we've covered. I'm just going to close that down. That support the knowledge construction concepts. We've talked about how that can be incorporated within Microsoft Teams to allow every educators as well as learners to add content, and how they can how you can add it to your class notebook within the team to share content with your learners. And if you aren't familiar with OneNote, one of the things I will show you at the end of this session is that the reason I'm not showing you lots of tools tonight is we have so many recorded contents that you can use, access at any point that's flexible, but I'm going to show you where they all are. We have something linked as well. We are linking straight on from that because I think these two work really nicely together. Self-regulation rubric, so I'll not read it all aloud to you, but I just want to flag up that the self-regulation rubric is there. And again, apps within Teams, such as the To-Do app, if you've not used that, Planner app. I'm such a fan of the Planner app. So again, if you are less familiar, so in here you would just add it as a new app, and you can add in tasks which can be allocated. It's so simple. Lists is also great. You can have targets, you can use tags, you can use it so that you can track the progress of things. So if you're working in a department, so remember, this 21st century skills for learning and design is not just about using with learners, it is about us as professionals as well. So these are tools that you could use. That lists app is amazing. And again, you might want to use Whiteboard in there. Again, I've got a slide that I'm going to show you some features of these shortly, but I would just flag up, if you've not already, make yourself a wee play team just to explore around some of these apps, add them in and explore. A huge fan of tasks. It's like a quick to-do list everywhere. Lists allows you, like I say, to have a lot more detail that you can add in, and Whiteboard is also beneficial in the self-regulated mode. So let me just go back to my slideshow. Okay, so again, we've got, are there learning goals? Are they being achieved? Are they being worked towards? Are they longer term? So is my young person, is the activity part of a long term? Are they checking themselves as they go back? Are they using retrieval practice strategies to go back, look at some learning? Are they self-identifying where they have gaps? And are they planning their own work to address those gaps, approaching for practitioner input, and are they engaging with you when you're addressing it and giving them feedback? So all of these tools, and again, if you haven't used OneNote with audio or video feedback, that is honestly fab. It's such a useful tool that you may find helpful. Also, if you are looking for young people who are maybe that little bit older, the forums submit files is a really useful way for them to be able to check in with you periodically, send you work that goes into your OneDrive. And again, if you look at our forums resources, and I'll show you that shortly, the files question allows young people to export, for example, a PDF or a Word document, upload it, or an image or a video, upload it to a forum, and it comes into your OneDrive for you to give feedback on in class later. So that's a really nice way for them self-regulating submission of work without it having to be in maybe a team or something slightly more traditional. And again, we've got these decision trees. So long-term goals is achievement and success. Are they planning their own work? So again, it's that acorn thing. If you plant the seed, how big is it going to get? Is it manageable? Are they overreaching and it's going to cause them to maybe miss areas that are crucial? Are they planning their own work successfully, and are they taking time to revise based on the feedback that's given? Because we all know that that is so crucial. And just on that, I'm sure everybody on the call has seen it, but if not, I mentioned it earlier, the 7 metacognition strategies. So as I said, when I was reading the 21st century stuff, it's been around for a while, but when I was reading it and this came out, I was thinking, oh, there's a lot of crossover between those two, and that ties in really nicely. So if you haven't seen this, we don't have time on this call today to go into it in depth. But again, it's that whole sort of 7-step process of planning together, understanding where your learners are, then planning what their learning is going to look like, how they're going to use appropriate strategies and challenge themselves, and how you can support them with that, using digital tools where is appropriate. It's really straightforward. This is a really useful piece of research, and although we're looking at 21st century, I don't want to give you even more reading. There is a sort of summarised version that is really good. The abridged version of this is really useful to kind of get an idea of that if you haven't had an opportunity to read it. The page is hyperlinked, so you should just get taken there if you click it when it's available. And that links into, so that research, the core upshot of that was, so just skipping slightly out from the Microsoft but hopefully you'll see why in a minute. EEF, who work a lot with the Attainment Fund, identified some of their research. They had said that for independent learners, that self-regulated learning that we just saw, there are 3 aspects. So they said it's plan, monitor, and evaluate. And these are the tools that we would suggest that that you may want to think about. So we just looked at Edge collections, and I've mentioned Whiteboard. We've spoken about OneNote. Teams, again, using rubrics for monitoring, submission of work, etc., and aligning learners, being able to align themselves articulately but also accurately on a rubric and be able to give sort of feedback on where they think they are, and address any learning gaps that they might want to have. And then how you can evaluate it. So session 3, we're going to talk about different ways that you can capture learning, and one of those might be podcast, sway, forms, and stream. So this is not from 21st century CLD, this is linked to that EEF, but there is a sort of crossover, and I've put in these Microsoft products to let you see where I think that they can join over. And the skills and behaviour that would come from those, I'll not go over this just now, but you might want to take a moment just to have a little look. So these are the tools from Self-Regulated that are Microsoft products. These are the behaviours that young people might be able to apply. So for example, timetabling using the planner. So this green icon is the planner tool, and that is the collections. So timetabling, developing questions, and then here are some ways that this might look. So I hope you find that might be a useful resource. So there's one for each of those 3 areas, and hopefully they can just give you some idea. And again, if you've not seen Stream, we have a series of videos to support you with that, but that would allow young people to access recorded content. It would allow you to be able to produce material that could be supportive for their feedback that they can then access and things as well. Okay, so we've looked at knowledge construction. So we move on to, once they've got all their information and they're starting to do this independently, we want them to collaborate with other people. So communication and collaboration are key. When we're planning our learning experiences, we want them to be able to, we need to ask 2 core questions. So what do we want them to be able to communicate about their ideas, and how different audiences will shape this. And again, we have so many resources that are available. So for example, when learners are ready to share their ideas, they might want to connect using you might want to, when you're thinking about specific audiences, this rubric that I'm about to show you is really useful, talking about video calls, thinking about video calls, audio calls that you might want to have with learners. It could also be that providing video content, or using games-based learning as well could be a really nice way for them to be able to communicate. And again, we're going to look at Minecraft coming up in a couple of weeks' time as well. But Teams is a super way to be able to communicate with each other, with practitioners. You can also use PowerPoint Record. Could I just get a wee yes or no in the chat if you've seen PowerPoint Record? Because if not, I'll show you where it is before we move on. Yep. I think most people saying yes. If you've not seen it, when I come out of this format, I'll mention it really quickly where it is for the people who hadn't seen it. But PowerPoint Record allows a young person or you as a practitioner to record anything that's on your screen, put it into a PowerPoint and send it for feedback, for example, and it allows them to be able to give an explanation of the process that they've gone through. It also allows you to share it in thinking about that audiences. What is the audience? If you've got older pupils, that might be a nice way for you to use it, because you want to model how you want them to respond in a sort of more grown-up professional way, if it's secondary pupils particularly. Okay. But when we are looking at communication, we have to think about how many ways are we offering them. So mentioned a few there. I mentioned podcasts a little while back and Sway, which you can use to record and share out your share videos with your learners. You can record from PowerPoint, and we've also got Teams. We've got Word that allows us again to communicate and check our fluency, check our grammar, and asking young people to select the one that they feel either meets the needs in their learning gap. So again, if they are aware that maybe they need some assistance around grammar, or they'll maybe know their needs, or you can give feedback that identifies them, they can select the appropriate product. And using those different communication tools again links us right back to that knowledge construction about applying and transferring skills. So are they also able to give logical explanations and examples? And finally, are they communicating for a particular audience? So again, we all work with learners, so I'm not going to explain those in a lot of detail because you all are aware of what those mean, but just to flag up that that's the kind of core messages. So again, age and stage appropriateness of use of tools, but also consideration of the audience that that resource is going to. If you have digital leaders, so if you're primary as well, this is the kind of year where we ask them to maybe pass over information. Given the audience they might be passing over their information to maybe younger, this is an area where it would be which tool would be best suited to not only explain the information they're trying to relay, but also would be appropriate for the age and stage of the people that are coming into those posts, for example. The same with if your school has house captains, etc., that allows them to maybe create like a jobs video, my role in the school, and share it with younger learners coming into the school around transition, and things like that. And that applies at all stages. Okay, so collaboration. So two things to take away from collaboration. One is about substantive decisions, about everybody working together. So ensuring that there's interdependence essentially. So everybody contributing, because every one of us, I'm sure, has been part of a group where not everyone is fully either engaged or maybe pulling their weight or maybe working to their strength. And we all want to have ownership and we all want it to be successful. So if we give learners the tools at this point, it increases the likelihood of success, but it also ensures that there's cohesiveness in the group and there's a depth of understanding that's also there. So again, Teams is a great one for that, and we have I'll come on to Teams in a minute, but we have two levels of accountability when we're collaborating according to the 21st century skills. So there's individual accountability, where everybody is responsible for what they're doing, and then group accountability. Essentially, what we want is group accountability, where everyone is working together. We want everybody to work to their own strengths, but we also want them to be able to take responsibility for the task at hand. So an example that Microsoft gives is when group members research circulation, for example. They work together to carry out a scientific example, and then they all rely on each other's work to successfully identify what they saw during the experiment, and they note it down. They use different devices. They are also in a different activity that they suggest. It talks a little bit, and you'll see this. The reason I'm giving you examples from this is these are things that you'll see when you go into the units, if you do want to go through the units for example, for the exam. But it allows you to see creating a website, looking at history. So again, that interdepartmental that I talked about in that knowledge construction. So if you're creating a website for tourism, and that's something that happens in business studies as well as in primary school at different levels with different expectations, but it's then looking at history, culture, accommodation, and there's lots of ways to link different departments into that. So again, you could be linking with the geography department, or you could be looking at social studies, depending on age and stage. But you could also be linking with maths for the money aspect, etc. So if you want to know more about that, there's a link directly to the page that gives a huge, it's a really long page, but it gives you lots of examples around collaboration. But again, building on all of the cooperative learning strategies that we may have all covered in teacher training or as professional learning, so that making sure that everybody has that role, everybody has that responsibility, and everyone is using resources that play to their strengths. So that might be that use an immersive reader to share information, capture it from learners. It might be using that OneNote again, creating a forum within your team, so that everybody is working to their strengths, everybody is accountable, and all the resources can be combined and shared. So again, we have a 5-step rubric, and at the top end, that shared responsibility, group decisions, and interdependence. So again, we've got our branch. I really like this. I would say that because there's very specific terminology, the collaboration one, it is a longer read, but it's got a lot for us to consider, especially when we're thinking about the classroom environment. Like, what does our environment look like? How does that lend itself to good collaboration? What tools do we have available that are flexible? So yeah, I would definitely say have a wee look at the collaboration and the communications one as well. So again, we go from like a single modal communication, so that might just be standing up giving a presentation, to multimodal. Obviously, the devices that you have available in your school dictate how many methods of communication that are available, but it's again about that transferable skills, being able to problem solve. So again, thinking back to those, the self-management, social intelligence, innovation. How are we using all of these tools to collaborate and communicate effectively? It's not about having all of the fancy gizmos, it's about what you do with them. And again, in here, that branch. Your aim for problem solving innovation, where you want to reach sort of 3rd and 4th level, and that's a bit like sort of Higgies, you're aiming for that 3-4 upwards level. If not the top level, as we all would be. But just that flexibility of look at young people as they've gone through school, being able to apply their knowledge, build on it, and maximise the impact technologically and culturally. So where can you go to get some help and support following this? So I've covered a couple of things with you. I do want to flag this up. If you've not used Whiteboard within your team or on your desktop, please check it out. So I know lots of people maybe use other products, and your interactive boards in your classroom will also have built-in things as well. And all of them, it's not to say one is better than the other, but this is also available to you, and it links with some of the tools that you may likely already be using. This is Whiteboard, Microsoft Whiteboard on desktop, so that's one thing to flag up. But you can see here I can import images, there's templates that are available in just a huge wealth of different options. So there's like a planning tool. So remember when I was saying about self-regulation and that collaboration? This is why I really like Whiteboard. It has these tools. So for example, if we drag this one on, I've already got a board. I can zoom in and I can edit I can edit the whole bit of all the text that's going on there, but there's a whole range of different things. I can also, if I just get back out of that, add in all sorts of graph and discussion points. and I can, if people have put ideas on and I share it in a team space or in a OneNote, I can get reactions. So people could write their comments on it, put information on, put text on, and then we can get reactions. And there's a range of reactions that can go on. So you can ask for somebody to put on likes so that you can gauge it. And again, age and stage appropriate. It might not be appropriate for your primary 1 class if you're here with early years. So it might not be appropriate for you to do like a class forum. However, you might want to use the reaction buttons on a whiteboard using visuals, so combination of pictures and reactions. There's a whole section on DigiLearnScot. So a couple of things to show you. All of the areas, before I go on to DigiLearnScot, all of the areas for the 21st century course, and that is here. So this is the course that you would go on. You would just go to, if you just search Microsoft 21st Century Design, however, you're all in this team, and Sarah has populated, there's lots of information there, and there's also in channel 1, there's links to the Microsoft Certified Educator OneNote as well. But on this 21st Century Learning Design coursebook, it will give you an opportunity to go out to this big OneNote that you can view. In here, there's a whole section on these anchor lessons. So if you select the activity that you want to do based on the project, you can go in, you can select, and then there's a whole activity. So for example, I'm technologies, so let's go design a catapult, and you should have this open. Well, there we go. It'll give you an entire activity to do based around the 6 dimensions of 21st century learning design. There's whole ranges from history right through to, I mean, I'm not even going to start with the curriculum, but there's a lot of areas covered. So as I say, when you do go to that course, 21st Century Participant Notebook, and it's anchor lessons that you're looking for. But again, if we go to the section, so for real world problem solving, there are lots of information, and there's big ideas about real world problem solving that's available to you, including some video content that you can watch too. Bite size, it's all bite size. Okay, so other resources are DigiLearnScot. So there's QR codes, but essentially if you Google DigiLearnScot, we have a whole range. If you go to our professional learning area, underneath webinars, there's a whole section you can view by sector, or you can go to 365, and that takes you to all this content here. We also have a range of learning courses, and if you are interested in the self-regulated stuff, you might want to check that one out, but we have a whole load of stuff. In our Microsoft section, just so that you're aware, for if you are doing the MCE course and you would like some additional information, selecting that 365 button takes you to this page. We have some end of year guidance. It's due for a refresh for this end of year, but it's always just about keeping yourself safe within Globe, but it has some like nice tips to consider about features of using 365 safely, sharing and not sharing for that kind of end of year tidy up. Each one of these buttons takes you to a different area. So for example, if we go to the whiteboard one I just mentioned, you'll see here we have information, and then it takes you to our 3 set of bite-sized videos. Each one I think is about 5 minutes long. If you go to one of the ones, for example, on Teams, oops, that's forms. Well, forms will do. You can see there's more videos. I think Teams is the most, it has about 14 for you to view. So we have a whole range of information there. You can also go to DigiLearnScot, where we have a huge range of playlists that are available. We also have some information around subject recordings, and we have the launch video. So if you weren't at our launch of the MCE or the MOS offer that's happening just now through to mid-June, you can watch those 2 launch videos. But for the 365 ones, you can go down and you can have a look through to get some information about the products that maybe you just want to refresh. And if you want the full playlist, go to that What is 365. We also at Education Scotland have Glow Connect. So the Glow team have a whole section in the Help with Glow around Microsoft Office 365. They have a lot of their own content, but they also highlight some really useful links that take you to Microsoft's own website, just to save you having to search around as well. But there's loads of information from the Glow team in there. And then the course, as I mentioned, this is the link that takes you to all of those individual units that I spoke about earlier. If you are in our team and you are new, because I know that some people joined it specifically to come to this call, so if you're new and you would like to sort of find out more or to actually take part or look at the OneNote that has been attached that's about the MCE, go to the first channel, go to the bit that says One More, and then choose that 21st Century Participant Coursebook, and you'll see loads of information in there. If you do want to share this after, please get your colleagues to scan the QR code